Let's stay with matters around agriculture, because at the same time South African farmers have expressed concern at the extension of the import restrictions by Botswana. Now the ban on some fresh produce like tomatoes, potatoes, onion among others was due to expire at the end of this month, but Botswana has extended this to the end of next year. Let's talk about how does this then impact the sector, and speak to Thoko Didiza, who's the Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development Minister. Thank you so much for your time, Minister. Before we even talk about, the extension on the ban, the story that we just played right now, news that the industry as well not performing well. Of course, there's, what we've seen around, the input costs rather, and also the avian flu and everything else that the industry is battling with. This is certainly not good news.
Certainly it is not good news, and it's important for us to appreciate that the issue of input cost, we have seen it, particularly the shocks as a result of the conflict in Eastern Europe and what has been happening in the food value chain. That has had an impact on fertilizer and other agricultural chemicals, which has actually risen the cost of production for our farmers. But also the energy issue, which is the reason why, as government, we had to put in place the Agro Energy Fund as an intervention to assist farmers to look for other alternative energy sources. The other element has been animal diseases and the challenges of biosecurity, which have actually seen us, particularly on issues of avian flu, which we have contained now, and we are looking at how farmers, through the imports that we are allowed for fertilized eggs, to actually restock and start anew.
Yeah, and
this, what we're seeing now with Botswana, is compounding the problem. Because during the SACU summit, which was held June in Swaziland, we raised this issue sharply with the governments of Botswana and Namibia, because in our view, we do think that this has a negative impact to our farmers, but also it has a negative impact to the importing countries such as Botswana and Namibia. And it must be appreciated that while we note the concerns that the two countries want to address, particularly Botswana in this case, where they are looking at improving their food self-sufficiency as a country, our view, though, is that this must not be done in a manner that it impacts negatively on the agricultural trade between the two countries.
Now, Minister, as you say that you've spoken about it then, and I'm going to get into what does it look like then to protect the economic interests versus making sure that relations are healthy, but would you say that the decision to extend caught you off guard?
It did catch us off guard. And remember that, Botswana did indicate that this is coming to an end at the end of December 2022. But they've now extended to 2025. In addition to that extension, they've actually put other new commodities into the list. So it's not only the list that we're dealing with earlier, but you now have got new horticulture products that have been put on the list of what they would also restrict trade on from South Africa in particular. And I have actually indicated to our ambassadors, and we're communicating with the Botswana ambassadors, to really seek an urgent meeting between ourselves so that we can have a fuller interrogation of this measure that has been put, and share with Botswana the impact that it will have on our farmers.
Are you making headway in that regard to get the meeting?
Well, we hope we will make a headway, because we have indicated that even if it's virtual, we are willing to actually have that meeting, because for us it's important to be on the same page with our neighbors to understand, on one hand, the rationale for what they are doing, but at the same time for them to appreciate the impact that this is having on our local producers.
And part of what they're saying when one reads up on what, on this particular issue is that they're saying that they're looking out for the interests of their local producers and making sure that they support them, nurture them, and ensure that they also, do become the suppliers in this particular sector. But at the same time, there is the issue of, the relations between the countries, as you've now raised, because you've raised this issue. So how do you begin to strike a balance here to make sure that for them, they do have their concerns ironed out, as well as, to try and protect their local producers, but at the same time, the relations are not impacted?
Well, it is important. That is why such a meeting is critical, because we have to understand what the measures are they putting in place to protect and actually develop their farmers, which is important. And one can't deny any country to look at improving its food self-sufficiency. But how do you do that in a manner that does not impact negatively to your neighbors with whom you are trading, with whom you have got an interconnectedness, amongst your economy? Because also, if part of what you want to do in the long term is to trade with South Africa, you don't have to break the bridges because now you want to assist your own producers, but is to actually look broader than that and say, I'm looking at provisioning for my own people, but at the same time, I would like to see you as my market. So how do we deal with these issues in the manner that doesn't hurt you in the short term and does not affect me in the long term?
And I suppose it also, takes the conversation even outside of South Africa and Botswana alone, because there is the African Continental Free Trade Area to also be considered, even going forward as well. And really, what would this mean then for that as well?
First and foremost, even before we even reach the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, it's part of the Southern African Customs Union, because we have got a customs union that includes South Africa, Swaziland, Namibia, and Botswana. So what impact will this have to those members of SACU? And this is why we were raising this thing in the SACU meeting, because we think it would have the negative impact in terms of how we have handled this relationship in the past. And as you correctly say, what is the likely impact for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area? So how do we ensure that we grow, but at the same time, we do not hurt each other in that growth process, particularly when it comes to trade?
Are you nervous that this could also impact the sector as well, as far as jobs are concerned?
The fact that we have raised the issue is an indication of the concern that we're having, because particularly when the announcement come now, you might already have orders between the two countries. You might have some of our producers who are already destined to export to Botswana particular commodities which may be affected by this ban. So they will have to rethink where they take these products. So it will have an impact, and that is my concern.
And Minister, I hope we talk then once you've had the meeting, and then we understand as to how then do things proceed going forward, because there's a concern from both countries. And, as you say, you need to find one another, but let's see then if that is even a possibility. But let me thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Thoko Didiza, Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development Minister.